They say black boys become men at 18. I became one at 18 when I found out my father had gambled away our family house in an illegal poker game and forged my mother's signature to do it. My name is Xavier Robinson, and this is the story of how I took my own father to court, exposed his fraud, and saved 3 generations of family history from disappearing into his addiction. The house on Maple Street had been in our family since 1952. When my great-grandmother Lula Mae Robinson bought it with money she saved working as a seamstress for white families downtown. It was a small 2-story brick house with a front porch, 3 bedrooms, and a backyard big enough for family barbecues and birthday parties. To most people driving past, it probably looked ordinary, but to our family, it represented everything. Great-Grandma Lula Mae raised 4 children in that house as a single mother after her husband died in Korea. When she passed in 1978, she left the house to my grandmother, Betty Lou Robinson, who raised 6 children there, including my father Marcus. When Grandma Betty Lou got older and needed help with the upkeep, she signed the house over to my parents in 2010 with the understanding that she could live there for the rest of her life. By the time I was born in 2005, the house held 3 generations of Robinson family history. My great-grandmother's sewing machine still sat in the corner of the living room. My grandmother's collection of gospel records filled an entire bookshelf. Every room contained photographs spanning 70 years of graduations, weddings, birthday parties, and family reunions. But more than just history, the house represented security. While other families in our neighborhood dealt with evictions and rent increases, we never had to worry about having a place to live. The house was paid off, and the only expenses were utilities, taxes, and maintenance. Mama always said that owning our home was what allowed her to work part-time as a teacher's aide instead of taking 2 full-time jobs, like many of our neighbors. Xavier. Grandma Betty Lou would tell me while we sat on the front porch watching kids play in the street. This house is your inheritance. Someday you will raise your children here, just like I raised your daddy and his brothers and sisters. I loved that house and everything it represented about our family's journey from poverty to stability. I loved the creaky 3rd step on the staircase that announced when someone was coming upstairs. I loved the kitchen window that looked out onto Mama's vegetable garden. I loved the attic where Grandma stored boxes of family photographs and documents dating back to the 1940s. Most of all, I loved the sense of permanence the house provided. No matter what challenges our family faced, we always had that house to return to. It was our anchor, our foundation, our proof that hard work and sacrifice could create something lasting. Which made it even more devastating when I discovered that my father had thrown it all away for the thrill of a poker game. The first sign that something was wrong came in late August, just 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. I was getting ready to start my senior year of high school and thinking about college applications when a man in a suit knocked on our front door. "I am looking for Marcus Robinson," the man said when I answered the door. "He is not home right now. Can I help you with something?" "I am Jim Patterson from Patterson Properties. We are the new owners of this house, and we need to discuss the transition timeline with the current occupants." I stared at him for a moment, confused. "I think you have the wrong address. This house belongs to my family." "Son, I have the deed right here," he said, pulling out a folder of papers. "This property was sold to my company 3 weeks ago. We are planning to renovate and flip it, but we wanted to give the family time to make moving arrangements." "There has to be some mistake," I said, my heart starting to pound. "My parents would never sell this house." Mr. Patterson looked uncomfortable. "According to our records, the property was transferred to us as payment for a gambling debt. The previous owner signed over the deed on August 10th. August 10th was the night my father had supposedly gone to a friend's house to watch a basketball game. He had come home around 3 a.m., claiming the game had gone into overtime and they had stayed up talking afterward. I remembered because it was unusual for him to stay out that late on a weeknight. "Can I see those papers?" I asked. Mr. Patterson handed me the folder, and I saw my father's signature on a document titled Deed Transfer in lieu of debt payment. According to the paperwork, Marcus Robinson had lost $87,000 in a poker game and had signed over the family house to cover his debt. But what caught my attention was another signature on the document, one that was supposed to be my mother's. In our state, both spouses had to sign off on the sale or transfer of a family home. The signature on the deed said Patricia Robinson, but it did not look anything like my mother's actual handwriting. "Mr. Patterson," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "can you give me some time to discuss this with my parents? I think there might be some issues with these documents." "Of course, son. We are not trying to rush anyone out. Take a week or two to get things sorted out." After Mr. Patterson left, I sat on our front porch staring at those papers and feeling like my world was collapsing. My father had gambled away our family house. The home that 3 generations of Robinsons had lived in, the house that represented everything we had worked for, was gone because of a poker game. But more than that, I was almost certain that he had forged my mother's signature to do it. When Mama got home from work that afternoon, I showed her the papers that Mr. Patterson had left. I watched her face go through shock, disbelief, anger, and finally heartbreak as she read through the documents. "Xavier, I never signed this," she said, pointing to the signature line. "I do not know anything about your father gambling away our house." "Mama, does that signature look like your handwriting?" She studied it carefully. "No, baby. This is not how I sign my name. Look at how the P is written. That is not how I make my P's. And the way the R connects to the O. I do not write like that." "So Daddy forged your signature?" "It looks that way." We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the magnitude of what my father had done. He had not just gambled away our house. He had committed fraud to do it. "Mama, where is Daddy now?" "He said he was working late at the shop." "But Xavier, I think we need to call him and ask him to come home right now." When my father walked through the front door an hour later, Mama and I were sitting at the kitchen table with the deed transfer papers spread out in front of us. His face went pale when he saw the documents. "Marcus," Mama said in a voice I had never heard her use before, "explain this." Daddy sat down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. "Patricia, I can explain. Explain how you gambled away our family's house without telling me. It was not supposed to happen like this. I was winning for most of the night. I was up about $15,000, and I thought I could win enough to pay off your car and maybe put some money aside for Xavier's college. But you lost instead. The other players were cheating. I am sure of it. They set me up to lose everything. So you decided to bet our house. I was desperate. I knew if I could win one big hand, I could get back everything I had lost and come out ahead." Mama stood up from the table, her voice getting louder. "Marcus, this house does not belong to just us. Your mama lives here. Your great-grandmother bought this house 70 years ago. You had no right to risk it. I thought I could win it back. And what about my signature on these papers? I never signed anything." Daddy looked up at her with guilty eyes. "Patricia, I had to have both signatures for the transfer to be legal. So you forged my name? I was going to tell you about it after I won the money back. You were going to tell me that you had committed fraud." I had been listening to this conversation in stunned silence, but at that moment I stood up from the table. "Daddy, do you understand what you have done? Xavier, I know you are upset, but..." "Upset? You gambled away 3 generations of our family history. You committed fraud by forging Mama's signature. And now some company is planning to tear down our house and flip it for profit. Son, I am going to figure out how to fix this." "How? How are you going to fix this?" "I can get a loan, maybe mortgage my truck, find some way to buy the house back." "With what money? You just lost $87,000 gambling." Mama sat back down at the table, and I could see tears in her eyes. "Marcus, I want you to leave this house tonight." "Patricia, this is my home too." "No, it was your home until you gambled it away. Now it belongs to Patterson Properties, and I do not want you here when I have to tell your mother what you did. You cannot kick me out of my own house. It is not your house anymore. You signed it away, and I cannot stand to look at you right now. That night, my father packed a bag and went to stay with his brother James. Mama and I were left to figure out how to break the news to Grandma Betty Lou and what options we had for fighting the house transfer. "Mama," I said as we sat in the living room surrounded by 70 years of family memories, "I think Daddy's signature forgery might give us a way to get the house back." "What do you mean?" "If he forged your signature, then the deed transfer is fraudulent. Maybe we can prove that in court and get the transfer reversed." "Xavier, I do not know anything about fighting legal battles. That sounds expensive and complicated." "It might be, but Mama, this house is all we have. If we do not fight for it, we are going to lose everything." The next morning, I called in sick to school and spent the day at the public library researching property law and fraud cases. I learned that forged signatures could indeed invalidate real estate transactions, but proving forgery required expert analysis and often extensive legal proceedings. I also learned that we had a limited window of time to challenge the deed transfer before it became much more difficult to reverse. If Patterson Properties sold the house to another buyer or made significant improvements to the property, our legal options would become more complicated. That afternoon, I called a lawyer named David Chun, who specialized in real estate fraud cases. Mr. Chun agreed to meet with us that evening to review the documents and discuss our options. "Mrs. Robinson," Mr. Chun said after examining the deed transfer papers, "this signature definitely does not match the other samples of your handwriting that you provided. I think we have grounds to challenge this transaction based on document fraud." "What would that involve?" Mama asked. "We would need to hire a handwriting expert to provide a formal analysis of the signature. We would also need to file a lawsuit against both your husband and Patterson Properties to reverse the transaction." "How much would that cost?" "The handwriting expert will cost about $1,500. My legal fees for a case like this would be around $10,000. However, if we win, the defendants would likely be responsible for paying our legal costs." Mama and I looked at each other. We did not have $15,000 to spend on legal fees, but we also could not afford to lose our house. "Mr. Chun," I said, "what happens if we do not fight this? What happens to my grandmother, who has lived in this house for 40 years? She would have to move out when Patterson Properties decides to begin their renovation work. Since she has no lease agreement or ownership stake in the property, she would have no legal right to remain there." That night, Mama and I had a long conversation about our options. We could accept that the house was gone and focus on finding a new place for the three of us to live. Or we could spend money we did not have to fight a legal battle we might not win. "Xavier," Mama said, "this decision is going to affect your college plans. If we spend our savings on lawyer fees, there might not be money left for your education. Mama, if we lose this house, where are we going to live? How are we going to take care of Grandma? College does not matter if our family falls apart." "But baby, this is your future we are talking about. My future is connected to this family. And this house is part of what holds our family together." The next day, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I withdrew the $3,000 I had saved from working part-time jobs over the past 2 years, money that was supposed to help pay for college, and used it as a deposit to hire Mr. Chun and the handwriting expert. "Xavier," Mama said when I told her what I had done, "you cannot spend your college money on this. Mama, great-grandma Lula may bought this house so her family would have a foundation to build on. Grandma Betty Lou kept the house so her children would have security. You and Daddy were supposed to keep the house so I would have something to build my future on. I am not letting that legacy disappear because Daddy has a gambling addiction. But what if we lose the case? Then at least we will know we fought for what was right." The handwriting analysis took 2 weeks to complete, and the results were conclusive. The signature attributed to my mother was a forgery. The expert found multiple inconsistencies in letter formation, pen pressure, and overall writing style that proved someone else had signed Patricia Robinson's name on the deed transfer documents. "Mrs. Robinson," the expert explained during a meeting in Mr. Chen's office, Whoever forged this signature did a reasonable job of copying the basic letter shapes, but they could not replicate the subtle aspects of your natural handwriting patterns. The muscle memory involved in handwriting is impossible to fake perfectly. Armed with this evidence, Mr. Chin filed a lawsuit against both my father and Patterson Properties, alleging that the deed transfer was fraudulent and should be reversed. We also filed for a temporary restraining order to prevent Patterson Properties from selling the house or beginning renovation work while the case was pending. The legal battle that followed was intense and emotionally draining. My father hired his own lawyer and claimed that my mother had given him permission to sign her name on the deed transfer documents. Patterson Properties argued that they were innocent buyers who had relied on what appeared to be valid legal documents. Your Honor, my father's lawyer argued during one court hearing. Mr. Robinson admits that he signed his wife's name on the deed transfer, but he maintains that he had her verbal permission to do so. This was a family decision made under pressure, not an attempt to defraud anyone. Your Honor, Mr. Chin responded, Mrs. Robinson has testified under oath that she never gave her husband permission to sign her name to any documents, and she was not even aware that he was gambling with family assets. This was not a family decision. This was fraud committed by a gambling addict who was trying to hide his losses from his wife. The most difficult part of the legal process was testifying against my own father. I had to stand in a courtroom and tell a judge that my father was a liar and a fraud who had stolen our family's house. Even though I was angry at him for what he had done, it felt wrong to publicly destroy his reputation. Mr. Robinson, Mr. Chin said when I was on the witness stand, can you tell the court about your father's gambling activities prior to August 10th? I knew that my father sometimes played poker with friends, but I thought it was just for small amounts of money. I had no idea that he was gambling thousands of dollars or that he was willing to risk our house. Did your mother ever indicate to you that she had given your father permission to sign her name on legal documents? No, sir. My mother was shocked when she saw the deed transfer papers. She immediately said that was not her signature. What has this situation meant for your family? I looked across the courtroom at my father, who was staring down at his hands. Your Honor, this house represents 3 generations of my family's hard work and sacrifice. My great-grandmother bought it when black families could not get mortgages from banks. My grandmother raised 6 children there as a single mother. My mother and father were supposed to preserve it for future generations. Losing this house does not just mean we become homeless. It means we lose everything our family has built over 70 years. During cross-examination, my father's lawyer tried to portray me as a naive teenager who did not understand the complexities of adult financial decisions. Mr. Robinson, you are only 18 years old, correct? Yes, sir. You have never owned property, never been married, never had to make difficult financial decisions under pressure? No, sir. So you really cannot understand the circumstances that led your father to make the choices he made. I understand that my father chose gambling over his family's security. I understand that he committed fraud by forging my mother's signature. I understand that his choices put my grandmother at risk of losing the only home she has known for 40 years. But you do not understand the pressure of owing money to dangerous people, do you? No, sir. But I understand the difference between right and wrong. The trial lasted 3 days, and the judge took 2 weeks to make his decision. Those were the longest 2 weeks of my life. Every day, I wondered if we had done enough to prove our case, or if my father's gambling addiction was going to cost us everything. Finally, Mr. Chin called with the news. We had won. Xavier, the judge ruled that the deed transfer was fraudulent and should be reversed, Mr. Chin said. Patterson Properties has to transfer the house back to your mother, and your father is responsible for paying their legal fees and any costs they incurred. What about the gambling debt? That is between your father and the people he owes money to, but they cannot collect that debt by taking your family's house. The day we got our house back was one of the happiest and saddest days of my life. Happy because our family home was safe and Grandma Betty Lou would not have to move out. Sad because the legal battle had permanently damaged my relationship with my father and exposed his gambling addiction to our entire extended family. Xavier, Grandma Betty Lou said as we sat on the front porch celebrating our victory, you saved this house. You saved our family's legacy. I just did what great-grandma Lula May would have done. I fought for what belonged to our family. That woman would be so proud of you. You are more man at 18 than some people ever become. But even as we celebrated, I knew that our family would never be the same. My father's betrayal had broken something fundamental in our relationships with each other. The trust that had held us together for decades was gone, replaced by wariness and hurt feelings. My father disappeared from our lives after the trial. He moved to another state and cut off contact with our family. I heard through Uncle James that he was still gambling and had gotten into debt with even more dangerous people. Sometimes I wondered if I should feel guilty about the legal action that drove him away. But then I would look at Grandma Betty Lou sitting safely in her living room, and I knew I had made the right choice. The most difficult part was explaining to younger cousins and family friends why Daddy was no longer around. How do you tell a 10-year-old that their uncle gambled away the family house and had to leave town because of gambling debts? How do you explain that sometimes the people you love make choices that hurt the people they are supposed to protect? Xavier, my little cousin Jasmine asked during a family barbecue the following summer, why does not Uncle Marcus come to family events anymore? Uncle Marcus made some bad choices that hurt our family, I said. Sometimes when people hurt the people they love, they have to go away until they can figure out how to make better choices. But do you miss him? I miss the person I thought he was. But I do not miss worrying about what he might do to hurt our family. The legal battle also changed my college plans. The money I had spent on lawyers and expert witnesses meant that I had to attend community college instead of the 4-year university I had originally planned to attend. But I did not regret that decision. Baby, Mama said as I was filling out community college applications, I am sorry that fighting for this house cost you your college fund. Mama, I would rather go to community college and live in our family house than go to a fancy university and be homeless. But you had such big dreams. I still have big dreams. They are just going to take a little longer to achieve. 2 years later, I transferred to the state university with a full scholarship based on my community college grades and an essay about overcoming family challenges. The admissions counselor told me that my experience fighting for our family home demonstrated the kind of character and determination they looked for in students. Mr. Robinson, she said during my interview, your essay about taking your father to court to save your family's house was remarkable. That took tremendous courage for someone your age. I just did what needed to be done. That is exactly the attitude we want in our students. During my junior year of college, I got a call from Uncle James with news about my father. He had been arrested for check fraud in Nevada and was facing federal charges. His gambling addiction had escalated to the point where he was forging checks and using fake identification to get money for poker games. Xavier, Uncle James said, your daddy wants to know if you will visit him in jail. What do you think I should do, Uncle James? That is up to you, nephew. But I will say this. Your daddy is finally admitting that he has a problem. He started going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings in jail. I thought about it for several days before deciding to make the trip to Nevada. When I saw my father in the prison visiting room, he looked older and thinner than I remembered. The man who had once carried himself with confidence and authority now seemed broken and defeated. Xavier, he said when the guard brought him to the visiting table, I did not think you would come. I almost did not. I want you to know that I am sorry for what I did to our family. I am sorry for gambling away the house, for forging your mama's signature, for putting you in a position where you had to take me to court. Do you understand what you put us through? I understand that I destroyed my family for the thrill of a poker game. I understand that I chose gambling over my wife, my son, and my mother. I understand that you saved everyone from my addiction. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the weight of his words. Daddy, why? Why did you risk everything for gambling? Xavier, addiction is not logical. When I was at that poker table, nothing else mattered. Not the house, not your mama, not you, not Grandma Betty Lou. All I could think about was the next hand, the next bet, the possibility of winning enough money to solve all our problems. But you were not solving problems. You were creating them. I know that now. But at the time, I convinced myself that I was trying to provide for our family. I told myself that if I could just win enough money, we would never have to worry about bills or college expenses or anything else. And when you lost everything, I panicked. I thought if I could bet the house and win, I could get everything back and nobody would ever have to know how much money I had lost. But you forged Mama's signature. That was the worst thing I did. Not just because it was illegal, but because it showed that I was willing to lie and steal from the people I love. As I listened to my father's explanation, I realized that his gambling addiction had turned him into someone I did not recognize. The man who had taught me to ride a bike, helped me with homework, and showed me how to change a car tire had become someone who would risk his family's security for the thrill of a poker game. Daddy, what happens now? I am probably going to prison for 2 years. After that, I do not know. I burned all my bridges back home. Do you want to come back home? I want to be part of my family again, but I do not know if that is possible. I do not know if your mama or Grandma Betty Lou, or you can ever trust me again. Trust has to be earned. I know. And I do not know if I will ever be able to earn back what I threw away. I left that prison visit with mixed emotions. Part of me felt sorry for my father and wanted to help him rebuild his relationship with our family. But part of me was still angry about the betrayal and the stress he had put us through. How was the visit? Mama asked when I got home. He seems like he understands what he did wrong. But I do not know if understanding is enough. What do you mean? Mama, even if Daddy gets clean and stops gambling, how do we know he would not do something like this again if he got desperate? How do we trust someone who is willing to forge your signature and gamble away our house? I do not know, baby. I honestly do not know. My father was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, and he served his full sentence. When he was released, he did not return to our state. Instead, he moved to California and got a job doing construction work. He started calling once a month to check on the family, but the conversations were always awkward and stilted. Xavier, he said during one phone call during my senior year of college, I heard you are graduating with honors. I am proud of you. Thank you. I also heard you are planning to go to law school. That is the plan. I guess what happened with the house influenced your decision to study law. Partly. But mostly I want to help families who are dealing with situations like what we went through. That is good. You can help people in ways that I never could. Our conversations were always like that, polite but distant, filled with things we wanted to say, but could not figure out how to express. Grandma Betty Lou passed away during my second year of law school. She was 84 years old and died peacefully in her sleep in the house that Great-Grandma Lula May had bought in 1952. At her funeral, I gave a eulogy about how she had taught our family the importance of holding onto what matters most. Grandma Betty Lou lived in the same house for 65 years, I said to the congregation. She raised her children there, welcomed her grandchildren there, and died there surrounded by love. That house was not just where she lived. It was the foundation that allowed our family to grow and thrive. When that foundation was threatened, she trusted me to fight for it, even though I was just 18 years old. My father did not come to the funeral. He said he could not afford the trip from California, but I think he was afraid to face the family and the community after everything that had happened. After the funeral, Mama and I had to decide what to do with the house. It was too big for just the two of us, and maintaining it was becoming expensive. But neither of us could bear the thought of selling it after everything we had gone through to keep it. Xavier, Mama said as we sat in Grandma Betty Lou's bedroom, packing up her belongings, this house belongs to you now. What do you want to do with it? I want to keep it in the family. Maybe fix it up and rent out the upstairs to help cover the maintenance costs. Are you sure? You could sell it and use the money for law school or to buy a place of your own. Mama, This house represents everything our family has overcome. Great-Grandma Lula may bought it when black families were systematically excluded from homeownership. Grandma Betty Lou kept it during the civil rights era when our neighborhood was redlined. You and I saved it from Daddy's gambling addiction. I am not selling that legacy. Today, I am 26 years old and working as a lawyer specializing in elder law and family finances. The house on Maple Street is fully renovated and serves as both my home and my office. I help families navigate situations involving gambling addiction, financial abuse, and property fraud, problems I understand intimately because of what I went through with my father. My father and I have slowly rebuilt our relationship over the past few years. He has been sober from gambling for 4 years now and regularly attends Gamblers Anonymous meetings. He calls every week and visits once a year, staying in a hotel because none of us are ready for him to sleep in the house he once gambled away. "Son," he said during his last visit, "I know I can never undo what I did to this family. But I want you to know that watching you fight for this house taught me something important about what it means to be a man." "What is that?" "Being a man is not about taking risks or making big bets or trying to solve problems with one dramatic gesture. Being a man is about protecting what matters most, even when it requires sacrifices you do not want to make." I learned that lesson the hard way. We both did, but you learned it at 18, and it took me until I was 45. That says something about the kind of person you are. As I sit in the living room where Great-Grandma Lula may once sewed clothes for white families to earn money for this house, I often think about the choices that led to this moment. My father chose gambling over family security. I chose family legacy over personal convenience. Both choices had consequences that rippled through multiple generations. The most important lesson I learned is that sometimes being a man means standing up to the people you love when they make choices that threaten the people you are supposed to protect. It means choosing what is right over what is easy, even when what is right requires taking your own father to court. The house on Maple Street has now been in our family for over 70 years. It has survived segregation, redlining, economic hardship, and gambling addiction. It has provided a foundation for 4 generations of Robinsons to build their lives on. And someday, when I have children of my own, I will tell them the story of how their great-great-grandmother bought this house with money she saved from sewing, how their great-grandmother kept it through decades of struggle, and how their father fought in court to save it from their grandfather's addiction. Because some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight requires you to stand against your own family. Some legacies are too important to let disappear into someone else's destructive choices. The house on Maple Street is one of those legacies. And as long as I am alive, it will remain in the Robinson family, a testament to the power of fighting for what matters most. There are more stories like mine, guys who refused to stay silent, who broke the cycle instead of repeating it. 2 of them are right here on your screen. Click the one that speaks to your own fight. And if you want to walk with a community that knows sometimes saving your family means stopping them, tap the bell. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.